Welcome to the Taylor Made Tasty podcast. I'm Taylor, retired serial quitter turned goal boss coach, speaker, and consultant. I believe a beautiful life starts with a beautiful mindset. Join me as we amplify confidence, resilience, and actionable tools on the road to quit quitting on you and your vision. You are worthy of your goals, so let's go get there. Hey y'all, welcome back to another episode of Taylor Made Tasty, the podcast. How many times a day do you open a new browser just to Google something quickly? Or mindlessly check your email? What about hopping on Instagram, Facebook, or TikTok just for a minute, right? 10 times, 20 times, 100 times. In a study analyzing over 225 million hours of working time, they found the average user switches between tasks more than 300 times per day. And let me remind you, this is only during working hours and not when you're hanging out at home or relaxing, right? Not only does the switching pick apart our focus, but each of those decisions to switch tasks eats into our willpower a little bit. And I want to coach you on how automating solutions in your life will leave you with a little bit more motivation. We automate to motivate. And my thoughts on willpower are this. When our willpower is drained, similar to motivation, it doesn't always last, but when it's drained, eventually we hit what's called decision fatigue. And that's really lack of energy and focus leads to us making poor decisions. This is really where the problems begin. And automating solutions is the answer. More and more, our goals depend on making good choices. And by understanding decision fatigue and how we can counteract it, we can make sure that we are operating at a higher percentage of willpower, or AKA self-control, discipline, consistency, all of those things that we all want to be really good at. And simply put, decision fatigue is the deterioration of our ability to make good decisions after long sessions of decision making. So in other words, the more decisions you need to make, the worse you're going to be at weighing all the options and making an educated, research-backed choice. And that's research from data in your own life, decisions that you know that you make based on how you feel, right? So here's an example from a study that I read that researchers looked at more than 1,000 parole hearing decisions made by judges in the U.S. And what they discovered was that the most influential factor in whether or not someone was granted parole wasn't their crime, their background, or their sentence, but what time their case was heard. So prisoners who appeared early in the morning received parole about 70% of the time, while those who appeared late in the day were paroled less than 10% of the time. So no matter how rational or sensible you are, you simply can't make decision after decision without paying a price towards your goals. And unlike physical fatigue, which we are typically consciously aware of, decision fatigue often happens without us even knowing. We're just tired, we just feel burnt out, we don't care anymore, so we start to take less and less ownership of our decisions. Who has ever had that dinner time battle, right? What do you want for dinner? Where part of you doesn't care at all and the other part does care a little bit, but you're so tired and exhausted from making decisions, you don't always make the best one for the nourishment in those moments. And decision fatigue is part of what a social psychologist, Roy F. Baumeister, calls ego depletion, or the idea that you have limited willpower. So when you use it up, you'll make poor choices. Or working for an extended period of time or being forced to make multiple complex decisions uses up your stored willpower even faster. And I'm sure you felt those moments when your energy levels are low and it's nearly impossible to make smart decisions. At that point, it seems obvious to think that we're running out of the resources that we normally use, right? However, it's not that simple. If your job or your life in general means making constant decisions and complex trade-offs, you're bound to get burnt out and start making poor choices at some point. Have you ever heard or seen, there's an Oprah episode with, I think it's titled The World's Worst Mother, but basically this mother goes through her day making 1,000 decisions a day. I believe she's a teacher, and she, because of that, over time, feeling like she's just fatigued, as a lot of parents are, she ends up leaving her child in the car when she goes into work that day. And the child does not make it, and she has self-dubbed that she is the world's worst mother. But I think as anyone can relate to just the overwhelm of parenthood in general, but the overwhelm of just life in general, that there are things that do fall by the wayside, not to that traumatic level at all times, but there are times and things and situations in our life where they can be somewhat dramatic because of our decision fatigue. So what do we do about it, right? We need to look at ways to counteract all the factors that go into decision fatigue, from protecting our focus and willpower to making sure our energy levels are high throughout the day by automating solutions. And I'm going to walk you through 4 actionable tools to go get there. So number 1, simplify the choices you need to make throughout the day. Maybe you've heard former presidents that have been known to only wear certain color suits, or like Steve Jobs was famous for his turtlenecks and blue jeans uniform. The idea behind a limited wardrobe was simple. With so many important decisions throughout the day, why start with deciding what to wear? Just like a soldier's uniform, they don't have to think about it, right? So how can you decide to simplify some of your most basic decisions on a daily basis? For you, this might mean scheduling workouts Monday, Wednesday, Friday, having a set weekly meal plan that rotates every 4 weeks, following a strict routine. When I had a 9-to-5 job, I would give myself a 6 p.m. Sunday curfew. No plans could be made after 6 p.m. because that is when I would get my mind right and get my week together. And when you're out on a Sunday night, it just kind of messes up with the rest of your week. Now that I have more flexibility, I don't keep that same solution. However, please feel free to adopt that if that sounds like something that would work with your life. But basically, by reducing the amount of decisions that you make every day, you free up space for ones that matter, right? Perhaps you've heard about the theory from James Clear, the 4 burners. So imagine your life as a standard stovetop. Each burner represents a different facet of it: your family, your friends, your health, your work. As James explains, in order to be successful, you have to cut off one of your burners. And in order to be really successful, you have to cut off 2. And what I feel like this means is pick your battles, choose your goals, right? Like if your fashion and appearance are important daily decisions to you, then spend time and energy on that. But if you want to eat healthy throughout the day, get rid of that decision and eat the same thing weekly. You can rotate things, but keep the decisions simple. Pick what decisions you want to put your energy towards and simplify or automate the rest. Number 2, set honest priorities for earlier in the day. So just like the judges were more likely to grant parole earlier in the day, your best time to make hard decisions is when you first start. So schedule your most important things for first thing in the day, whether that's working on a personal project, getting a hard work task done, or dealing with something that you've been putting off. And quote unquote earlier in the day is really just means what is the best time for you, right? Earlier in the day may still mean 11 a.m. versus for someone else, earlier in the day may mean 4 or 5 a.m., right? And one technique that I've researched and found especially helpful is to limit my daily to-do list to only 5 items and writing the list out the night before. This way, I am forced to prioritize what needs my attention and energy most, and complex tasks maybe go into the top 3 spots, with more mindless ones filling up the rest of the day. Number 3, focus on momentum, not willpower. Decision fatigue makes us feel out of control, and building momentum around tasks is really just one of the fastest ways to get that feeling of control back. So if you've been a client with me or you've worked with me before, you know this idea about chaining similar tasks together, because when that happens, there's less of a chance that you'll be faced with having to make a decision to get started. So you start chaining similar tasks together. And there's this psychology term for this concept, however the name is failing me right now. But basically, once we start a task, our brain becomes obsessed with finishing it. And a very famous example of this is Ernest Hemingway. When he was writing, he would always finish his writing day mid-sentence. The best way is to always stop when you are going good and when you know what will happen next. If you do that every day, you'll never be stuck. So find ways to build your own momentum throughout the day, either by following Hemingway's example or scheduling similar tasks together and vitally focusing. AKA batching, if you've ever heard of that term. You can batch similar tasks together, get a lot done in a short amount of time with vital focus, and now you have multiple tasks done within that batching. So if someone is to give you like an hour to get ready, what do? We turn on some music, maybe we make a little dressing drink. That's what I like to call a drink when I'm getting ready, my dressing drink. And so maybe we get that, and then we're just kind of like just fluffing around all over the place. But if someone says you have 20 minutes to get ready, what do? We vitally focus. We stay on track, right? And this starts with like in your life or in your career or at home, really breaking big jobs into manageable tasks, right? Start with the worst task first. Get that out of the way. You build confidence to continue going on these other tasks that you have. And really the concept of working with time, not against it. AKA manage your distractions. There's so many of them. I opened this podcast with talking about how we jump from browser to social to this to that, right? And anytime something comes into our head, we think, oh, I need to look that up right now. Manage your distractions. Number 4, lock in big decisions when your motivation and willpower are high. So rather than being susceptible to our changing energy levels, let's start to lock in key decisions when your energy is highest. For example, you could do meal prep on Sundays to ensure you're not making poor food choices throughout the week, planning for your week ahead when you're feeling good, working out when you feel the strongest. Maybe that's the morning, maybe that's the evening, maybe it's a vibe that you go to. If I go to this certain class, I feel like I'm working out when I'm strongest because of everything, the atmosphere, the music, whatever it is. It doesn't have to be a time of day. It could be a location. It could be an atmosphere. There are also apps out there to help us with keeping our willpower high by eliminating the distractions, right? Being able to manage these distractions. So things like rescue time is really a focus time session that will basically block social media sites and news for a predetermined amount of time so that you can get work done without being distracted by social media or bouncing all over these sites and apps trying to get your morning news fix, right? And really, it's just simplifying the choices you need to make throughout the day. right? That's number one. Number two is to set your honest priorities for earlier in the day. Number three was focus on momentum, not willpower. And number four was to lock in big decisions when your motivation and willpower are high. And we often have the thoughts of, what is wrong with me? Why can't I keep this motivation long enough to get a task done, to accomplish this goal? That is where the automation is the main character to keep your motivation. In theory, if you aren't always fatigued, you have room to stay motivated. And I want to remind you that you have permission to take rest days and to plan for them, to get refreshed, to take time away, to get your creative juices flowing, do a puzzle, do something you don't normally do, but something that will bring rest and rejuvenation. We do our best when we feel whole and fulfilled. Rest does that. All right, y'all, it is time for the quote of the episode. This quote is from Tony Robbins. The quote is, "In essence, if we want to direct our lives, we must take control of our consistent actions. It's not what we do that shapes our lives, but what we do consistently." Take that into your week, your month, or maybe even your year, and choose to automate to motivate. As always, thank you for being here. Thank you for being in my community. I'm so glad you showed up today, and let's go get there. Look at you, crushing it. Thank you for joining me for another episode of the Tailor Made Tasty podcast. My hope is you always leave with a takeaway to implement in your own goal-crushing journey. I would love if you could take a moment to leave a review. And if you're looking for a community of goal boss badasses just like you, be sure to check out tailormadetasty.com/membership.